There's a man in your town driving a 12-year-old Toyota with a small dent in the door. He mows his own lawn. He wears the same 3 jackets on rotation, and he is worth more than almost everyone on his street. 2 doors down, there's a man in a leased BMW, a watch that cost more than that Toyota, and a kitchen he remodeled twice. And he is one bad month away from losing all of it. You would never guess which one is which. That's not an accident. That's the whole point. Because the people who quietly get rich share a small set of habits, and almost every one of them is built to make sure you never notice. So let's name them, one by one. And the best part, you can start borrowing these habits today, no matter what you earn right now. Start with the strangest one, because it breaks everything you've been taught. The people who quietly get rich do not want to look rich. We assume wealth and the appearance of wealth are the same thing. They're opposites. Every dollar spent looking rich is a dollar that can't be used to actually become rich, so they made a quiet trade. They gave up the applause now in exchange for the freedom later. They drive the paid-off car. They live in the house that costs half what the bank approved, and they let you assume they're nothing special while their net worth compounds in total silence. Real wealth is invisible. It's the car not bought, the upgrade skipped, the account nobody sees. If you can see it, it isn't wealth, it's spending. And the research backs this up. Most everyday millionaires are first-generation wealthy, live in ordinary houses, and drive used cars they paid cash for. They just spent less than they made for a very long time, while everyone assumed the loud spenders were the rich ones. They almost always had it backwards. The person you assume is winning is often just the person with the best financed illusion. The second habit does the actual heavy lifting. They pay themselves first, and they automate it, so willpower never gets a vote. Here's what everyone else does. Money comes in, they pay the bills, they spend on life, and they promise to save whatever's left. And whatever's left is almost always nothing. The quiet wealthy flip the order. The moment money hits the account, a fixed slice moves out automatically into investments before they ever see it or feel it. They don't budget their way to wealth with discipline. They remove discipline from the equation. And the power of this is hard to believe. $600 a month, automated and left alone at a reasonable long-term average, can grow past $1 million over a working life. Not from a big salary. From a transfer you set up once and forgot. And to be clear, nothing in the market is guaranteed, and some years will scare you. But paying yourself first, before you can blink, is the closest thing to a wealth cheat code that exists. And ask yourself where last month's leftover money actually went. If you can't quite say, you're not alone. And that's exactly the leak this one habit closes. The third habit is about the 3 decisions that matter more than all the others combined. Your house, your car, and your food. You can obsess over cutting the coffee and the streaming service, and it will barely move the needle. But housing and transportation and food eat the overwhelming majority of the average person's income. So while everyone argues about lattes, the quiet wealthy quietly made the big 3 small. They bought less house than they could afford. They drove a reliable car until it died instead of leasing a new one every 3 years. And they cook far more than they order in. Put numbers on it. For most households, housing eats about a third of income. Transportation pushes you past 40%, and food takes the big 3 well over half of every dollar. Shave even 10% off those 3, and you free up more than you could ever claw back skipping coffee for a year. The quiet wealthy don't sweat the pennies. They win the 3 decisions that actually move the needle, and relax about the rest. So think about your own life for a second. Where does your money really go? Not the small leaks everyone frets about, but the big 3. That's where your wealth is quietly won or lost. The fourth habit changes what they do with money once it's saved. They buy assets, not audiences. Think about what most people acquire with a little money: a nicer car, a bigger TV, things that impress other people and lose value the second they're bought. The quiet wealthy acquire the opposite: a share of a business, an index fund that pays dividends, a small rental, a skill that raises their income. Every spare dollar goes towards something that owns, produces, or grows, instead of something that just sits there depreciating and asking to be noticed. One person collects liabilities that look like success. The other quietly collects assets that create it. Same income, same starting line, completely different destination. The only thing that changed was what each chose to collect. And you can watch it play out over 10 years. One driveway fills with newer cars and heavier payments. The other fills with nothing you'd notice and quietly starts throwing off income. 10 years is all it takes for those two lives to stop looking anything alike. The fifth habit requires the most patience, and it's the reason they win. They think in decades, not weekends. Most people evaluate money over a painfully short window. Did I have a good month? Can I afford this right now? The quiet wealthy zoom out until that noise disappears. They know a boring investment left alone doesn't just add up over 30 years, it multiplies, because the growth starts earning its own growth. So they don't panic when the market drops because they aren't looking at this year. They're looking at year 20. And here's the strange part. For years, it looks like nothing is happening, the progress feels invisible, and most people quit right there. But compounding doesn't grow in a straight line. It crawls, then it climbs, then it explodes, and almost all of the reward arrives at the very end for the few who refuse to stop. You've probably felt the front half of this yourself. You start, you check the balance a month later, it's barely moved, and you quietly wonder why you bother. That's the exact moment most people quit, right before it starts to work. The sixth habit sounds like a weakness, and it's their greatest strength. They are boring on purpose. We're taught success is dramatic. The big bet, the perfect moment, the bold move. The truth is almost insultingly dull. They invest the same amount every month whether the news is euphoric or terrified. They keep spending steady even after a raise. They resist the upgrade, the splurge, the I've earned it purchase, not once, but 1,000 quiet times. So ask yourself, could you invest the same amount every month for 10 years straight, through crashes and booms and sheer boredom, without stopping? Most people can't, not because they can't afford it, but because it's dull. The quiet wealthy made peace with dull. They turned boring into a superpower. Anyone can be disciplined for a weekend. The quiet wealthy are disciplined for a decade. And that's the one thing almost nobody can copy. The seventh habit reveals what all of this was for. They are not buying things. They are buying freedom. Ask most people why they want to be rich, and they'll describe stuff. Ask the quiet wealthy, and the answer is almost always the same. Options. The ability to say no. To walk away from a job that's crushing them. To take a month off when their kid is born. To never lie awake terrified about a single unexpected bill. They spend their money buying back their own time, because time, not stuff, is the actual luxury. And once you understand that, the 12-year-old Toyota starts to look different, doesn't it? It was never about being cheap. It was about being free. The flashy spender is often trapped, working harder every year just to keep paying for the image. The quiet accumulator is quietly buying their way out of that trap entirely. So here's the thread running through every one of these habits. The people who quietly get rich optimize their whole financial life around one idea: ownership and freedom, never appearance. They stopped performing wealth so they could actually build it. The rich you can see are often just people with expensive habits. The rich you can't see are people with quiet ones. And quiet habits, unlike a big salary, are something anyone can start building today. So let's put the whole pattern in one place because you'll want to remember it. They stay invisible instead of looking rich. They pay themselves first and automate it. They keep the big three small. They buy assets instead of audiences. They think in decades, not weekends. They stay boring on purpose. And they spend their money buying freedom, not stuff. 7 habits, not one of them needs a big income. Every single one is just a choice you can start making with the very next dollar that lands in your account. So here's my honest question, and I really do want the answer. Which of these habits do you already have without realizing it, and which one are you going to steal starting this week? Drop it in the comments. And if this made you see the quiet millionaire on your street a little differently, subscribe, because that's the whole channel. We break down the ordinary routines that quietly build extraordinary wealth long before anyone around you ever notices. So don't wait for a bigger paycheck to start. Pick one habit, the easiest one, and put it on autopilot this week. That's how every quiet fortune actually begins. Not with more money, with one small routine you refuse to quit.